Hi, welcome to this, my third video blog. This one's going to be a little more free-form than the previous ones. I was a little rushed this week, but I still got some stuff to say. First, I want to congratulate David Paul for successfully identifying this game as Rules of Engagement 2. That contest was on my website. And I want to congratulate 8-Bit Warrior for successfully identifying the quote at the end of my last video blog, which of course was from Katamari Damacy. 8-Bit Warrior has his own video blog. You should check it out. And while I'm mentioning video blogs that I like here on GameSpot, Princess Zelda and Old Woman both also have excellent video blogs that I've enjoyed watching. Alright, now that that's out of the way, I'm going to talk a little bit about game development, the game development biz. In this case. One thing I've been asked is, what is game development really like? Well, it's like this.
Why won't it work?
Repeat for 8 hours straight. 12 to 15 if you're crunching. So why do developers do it? Well, obviously we do it because we're crazy. No sane person would put up with the kind of frustration that we have to in order to get something to ship. Okay, that's a bit of an exaggeration. It's not that there aren't any rewards. There certainly are. When it does finally work, and everybody's going crowding around your monitor going, "Oh man, that's cool. Can I play?" That's awesome. That's awesome. Shipping a product, there's just nothing like shipping a product. Really, it's a fantastic experience, and that's basically why we do it. Of course, you'll recall that I didn't mention financial remuneration in there anywhere. It's like Carmack said, the Ferraris are just great, honest. Except that now we've got a problem, don't we? Because game developers don't get Ferraris anymore. They used to, but they don't anymore. Why? Because of publishers. Now I'm going to tell you this because it's going to tie into a couple of stories that I'm going to tell you after this. The first story I'm going to tell you is pure rumor. It's speculation. It's back fence gossip. And I probably shouldn't tell it to you, but I think I will anyway, because I want to. The second story is completely factual. It's one of my favorite stories of game development, and I've always enjoyed, telling this story, and now I'm going to tell it to you. But first, let's talk about how game development and game publishing actually work. Game studio gets together, puts together a demo, goes to a publisher. Publisher looks at the demo. Publisher says, okay. Publisher says, okay, I'll fund the development of your game. I will give you a certain amount of money when you complete an alpha of the game. I'll give you another certain amount of money when you complete a beta of the game, and I will give you the last part of your money when you complete gold, the gold version of your game. Now, game development studio works their butts off to make alpha before they run out of money, because they need the alpha money to go from alpha to beta. Then they work their butts off to go to get to beta so that they don't run out of money, because they need the beta money to get to gold. And then they work their butts off to get to gold, because they want the game to actually ship so that they can see some royalties from it. The problem is, game publishers have taken several lessons from the music industry. All that money that the publisher gives the developer, they didn't give it to them. It's a loan, which means that before the developer sees dime one from the game that they made, they have to pay all the money for the game's development back to the publisher, which means if the game isn't a super duper hit, the developer doesn't usually see any money. If the publisher makes money off the game, which is practically guaranteed under this system, then the publisher will come to the developer and say, "Hey, okay, the first game was a hit. Let's go ahead and make another one. Same deal as before. We'll pay you this much, and then this much, and then this much, depending on alpha, beta, and gold." All right, this is when things get really, really sneaky. Because typically, and this is typical on the second game that a studio makes, as the second game reaches completion, and it becomes pretty obvious that the game is going to be completed and it's going to be a shippable product, the publisher will refuse to certify a candidate, typically a beta candidate. They will find some techie reason that they've built into the contract to not certify the candidate, which means they don't have to pay the developer for completion of beta, because according to the publisher, the game isn't beta yet. So what happens? The developer runs out of money. So just before the developer runs out of money, the publisher steps in and buys the studio for next to nothing. Now everybody gets salaries, but they will never ever get royalties again. They'll make $55,000 a year each, so that the publisher can rake in millions and millions and millions based on what they do. This is how the industry works right now. And the most recent example I heard of this was Sony doing this to Ninja Theory, the guys who are making Heavenly Sword. Now you've seen Heavenly Sword. There's no freaking way Sony wasn't going to pick that game up, but they waited until Ninja Theory was practically out of money, so that Ninja Theory had to take whatever offer Sony made them. And they did. And Heavenly Sword's going to get made. Is Ninja Theory going to profit from it? Doubtful. Their profit will be that they continue to get to make games and therefore make lots and lots of money for Sony. The only way you can break this cycle is to make a lot of money off of the royalties for your first game, because that's the only game you're going to get royalties off of. Which brings me to my first story. And my first story is a story about Ensemble Studios. Ensemble is one of my favorite game companies. I am very proud to say that I own every single game Ensemble has ever made. It has always been my belief that the Ensemble-Microsoft relationship, Microsoft is Ensemble's publisher, had been one that didn't follow this pattern. It had been a healthy, relationship that allowed both companies to profit, because Ensemble certainly has profited from their games. I had been laboring under the delusion that Microsoft, seeing what a goldmine they had in Ensemble, decided not to, do the whole buy out and crush you thing, and decided to simply allow Ensemble to flower and continue to create games that would, bring profits to both parties and allow Ensemble to share in those profits. That's what I thought. I've recently been disabused of this notion. Now, again, this is all pure speculation. This is all pure rumor. I've got nary a fact to back this up. All I can say is that what I'm about to tell you rings a lot truer than what I used to believe about the Ensemble-Microsoft relationship. What I heard was that during the development of Age of Kings, as Age of Kings got close to the end of its development, Microsoft tried to pull the "we'll buy you now" instead of pay you for your game trick. Microsoft refused to certify a beta of Age of Kings, thinking that they could just, let Ensemble starve itself of money, and then buy Ensemble for a song, keep all the royalties from Age of Kings for itself, and then dictate to Ensemble what games they would make in the future. Unfortunately, Ensemble made an inordinate amount of money off of the royalties from Age of Empires, because Age of Empires was huge not only in America, but it was also huge in Europe. It was stupendously huge in Europe. So they had a lot of money. The founders of Ensemble also had several rich friends who were willing to fund the game to the end of its development. So when Microsoft said, "Okay, we're not certifying your beta of Age of Kings, instead we're going to buy you out for pennies on the dollar," Ensemble turned around and said, "No, you're not. We have more than enough money to fund the rest of the development of this game. We'll simply find another publisher. See ya." At which point Microsoft went, forget what we just said. We'll go ahead and pay you for this beta, which magically, the bugs that we were refusing to certify for become magically fixed, and we'll go ahead and certify you for this beta, and we'll pay for the rest of the development, and we'll share in the profits of the game, right? It's you and me, Ensemble, right? At which point Ensemble said, "Oh, you're going to buy us. You're going to buy us at market price, so we can all get rich, and then you're going to publish our game. Because if you don't, we will simply go over to anybody else, because anybody else would love to have us." At which point Microsoft said, "Okay." I mean, they made the best of a bad deal, bought Ensemble, making the Ensemble founders mega rich, as if they weren't already from the royalties, published Age of Kings. Age of Kings was an even bigger hit than Age of Empires had been, and everybody got rich instead of just Microsoft getting rich. Now, that rings a lot truer than what I had believed about the Microsoft Ensemble relationship. But it does pain me that Microsoft, even as they knew they had something stupendous on their hands, decided that they were going to, follow standard operating procedure and kill the golden goose anyway. It's so stupid, and I've got to hand it to Ensemble for having the guts to go up to Microsoft and grab them by the balls and say, "Who's your daddy now, bitches?" And get their money, which is what's important. On that same topic, congrats to Harmonix and congrats to Red Octane, because they got paid. They got bought by MTV and Activision, respectively, for millions of dollars, and at this point they're all presumably wearing money hats, which is great. And they did it the right way, Guitar Hero didn't cost a lot to make. The game was made in about 9 months. It was just a stupendous concept, stupendously executed, and they earned every penny of it. But that story makes me sad. It makes me sad because it reminds me of everything that's wrong with game development. So let me tell you a better story, a story about what's right with game development. Let me tell you the story of Insomniac and Naughty Dog. Insomniac and Naughty Dog were both studios that had made games for the PlayStation 1. They'd both made a lot of money for Sony. Insomniac had made the Spyro the Dragon series of games on the PlayStation 1, and you may go, Spyro the Dragon? A cute little game for girls? And, the Spyro games were excellent, honestly. I think Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage is one of the best designed platformers I've ever played, and that includes Super Mario 64. And Naughty Dog was making the Crash Bandicoot games, which were bog standard, run, jump, and occasionally shoot console games, platformers, but with really, really nice graphics. That's what Naughty Dog has always been about. Very, very standardized gameplay, but really nice graphics and lots of polish. And it worked. Both Insomniac and Naughty Dog sold a whole bunch of copies of their games, making themselves a lot of money and making Sony a lot of money. Then the PlayStation 2 was going to come out, and both companies decided to completely jettison their original properties, no longer make games for those properties, and create completely new properties for the PlayStation 2. An excellent, excellent idea. Naughty Dog, after Crash Team Racing, no longer made a Naughty Dog game. Every Naughty Dog game after that was made by somebody else. And the same thing with the Spyro games. After Spyro 3, there were no more Spyro games made by Insomniac. So, PlayStation 2, it's about to come out. It's about to take over the world. And we hear about Naughty Dog's game. It's called Jak and Daxter. It's going to be a platformer. It's going to look really, really pretty. And it's going to have some very interesting technologies like the streaming world. There are no load times in Jak and Daxter. You can run from one end of the world to the other without ever loading. But we didn't hear anything from Insomniac. And I, in particular, being a big fan of Insomniac, was wondering what the heck was going on. We didn't hear anything from Insomniac until about 6 months after the PlayStation 2 launched. And that was when they announced the Ratchet & Clank game. So what happened? Why was there this big delay? And the answer is because when Insomniac decided to create a new IP for their PlayStation 2 series of games. They said to themselves, "Oh, we've made 3 platformers now. We're getting kind of typecast. Maybe we should make something else. Let's make an action adventure kind of Zelda style game. How about something with a Mayan princess? Yeah, a Mayan princess. And we'll have her do." And they just got completely stuck. They couldn't settle on anything. They couldn't come up with a final design for their main character. They couldn't come up with a final design for the gameplay, and they couldn't come up with a final design for any of the levels. And they just could not figure out what the heck was wrong. They'd never had a game not come together like this. So they called in some consultants, including Mark Cerny from Cerny Games, and they presented everything they had, and they said, "Mark, what's wrong? Why won't this come together? We can't figure it out." And Mark Cerny said, "It's very clear. You don't want to make this game. That's why it won't come together. You want to make another platformer because you want to see how much better you can make a platformer on the PS2 than you could on the PS1. And all the Insomniac guys looked at each other and said, "Yeah, that is what we wanted to do. We only did this Mayan Incan girl crap because we thought we were getting typecast." And Mark said, "So make the game you want to make, for crying out loud." At which point Insomniac completely threw away the Mayan princess stuff. They were able to nail the concept behind Ratchet & Clank and the character design within 2 weeks, and it really started coming together. But then they had to go and tell Sony, "We're not going to make the launch." Now, they had already made Sony a lot of money, so Sony was able to give them a little leeway here, but it was still a bad scene. Them not making the PS2 launch was a big deal. Now, this is where things get awesome, because Jason Rubin, president of Naughty Dog, heard about this and called the guys at Insomniac up and said, "Hey, here you've got a problem. You guys are behind because you changed your game type." And the Insomniac guys said, "Yeah, the engine we were making is no good for a platformer. We're going to have to start all over." And Jason Rubin said, "Well, we just spent a year and $1 million just developing the engine for Jak and Daxter. It's an excellent platformer engine. Why don't you use that?" And the Insomniac guy said, "Well, that's a good idea. How much do you want for it?" And Jason Rubin says, "Oh, you can have it. Just if you make any improvements to it, share those back with us here at Naughty Dog." And this was just the saving thing for Insomniac. All of a sudden they had a state-of-the-art platformer engine to make their game on. And it saved them probably a year of development. And it's just a fantastic example of sharing between development studios. Insomniac added technology to the engine that would allow very long views. If you've played the original Ratchet & Clank and gone to some of the levels, lots of them have very high points where you can just see a long way. It was something that the Insomniac guys really wanted. And in return, when the Naughty Dog guys made Jak 2, they used that same technology for Haven City. So, you know, it was beneficial to both parties, and it allowed both parties to make out or to pump out games in the series, excellent games. Honestly, all 3 games in both the Jak and the Ratchet & Clank series were great, and they were pumping them out at the rate of 1 a year. Because they had this shared development platform to work on, and it just, you know, warms the cockles of my heart to see studios, you know, helping each other out like that. So I guess that's about all I've got this week. Hope you enjoyed the stories. Hang around after the credits. There's something. I'm not sure what yet. I'll decide after I finish this. And see you next week. Bye. it's pretty.
Mine is pretty, Daddy.
Here we go. Say hi.
Hi.